Hey, I'm Jake, and today I'm drawing a picture of Kylo Ren, and I'm talking about fan art. Alright, before I get into talking about fan art, and before I get into the inking and the coloring of this Kylo Ren piece, I just want to talk about my initial sketching stage. What I actually do is, a lot of times, especially when I'm short on time, I will sketch in Photoshop using the Cintiq. When I've got all the time in the world, or I don't want to be at my computer anymore, I'll use my sketchbook. But when I have a crazy busy week and I want to knock a drawing out, I use Photoshop. And the reason for that is I can get I get much better results in a quicker amount of time because of the tools in Photoshop. I actually don't have a lot of time to do these YouTube videos. In order to satisfy my desire to make YouTube videos and to share my ideas and my process and to actually get work done, I've given myself time caps on how much time I'm going to spend on the things that I work on for YouTube. So for this, I said no more than an hour spent on this drawing. That's what I can afford to give to it. I have a cap on how much time I'm going to spend editing, and also how much time I put into my notes and my thoughts on what I'm going to say. Here's my initial sketch stage. Alright, so this first drawing here, I've seen a lot of Kylo Ren fan art, and I wanted to try something a little more Shakespearean, I guess. So he's got the helmet of Darth Vader in his hand. He's in a very upright, firm pose. The sword is crossed in front of him. It's almost something Crusadian, it's something you would maybe see in a tapestry, or even in a lot of the artwork from Art Nouveau era. But I realized I just didn't have the time to really pull this off right. I might go back to doing something like this, maybe for a print or something. I think that would actually be really nice. But for this particular piece, I just didn't feel confident taking it further than that. My next pass was Kylo Ren on the cliff's edge. He's got the trees behind him. And I thought this was really cool, but then again, I felt like this was a little too ambitious for my hour time limit. So I took away the trees, and this was just not as cool. I didn't like the pose as well, but I wanted to go down this route. So I simplified it even more, and I just put him in like an alert pose. Maybe he's in the middle of a battle, or he's about to battle. He's looking behind him, and I really like that. And so I took that and pasted it in here. You can see, let me adjust the tone on that. So you can see, my pose is still there. I've got a sword much longer sticking out here. And then what I'll do is I'll take that layer down, lighten it, and then I'll do my line work over the top. And you could really see it there. And what I'll do is I'll go in, and this is where I figure out all the details, how the wrinkles are going to work, and some of the details in the helmet. I really love this guy's helmet. It's such a cool design. It's a design that doesn't. Sometimes you see designs in sci-fi especially, but even in fantasy illustration, and the designs feel like you have these two competing things, which is form, and then you have function. And form is just this all about making it beautiful, and function is how utilitarian it is. So on one side you have Jeeps. If you look at cars, you have Jeeps, and those are purely utilitarian in design. Or tanks. There's nothing about a tank. You look at the design of those things, and it's all about what the function of that thing is. And then on the flip side, you have a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. These beautiful cars, and it's all about the form and making the lines as graceful. I mean, those forms do provide a function in that they're aerodynamic, but really it is about making a beautiful car. If you want to see a fast car that's completely functional, you look at the F1 racers, and those things are purely functional. It's utilitarian in the sense that this thing is designed for going around a racetrack. And I think what you have in like the Italian supercars is you really have this priority of form over function. Now, going back to designs for sci-fi and designs for fantasy, I think a lot of times things lean towards this form. They want to make beautiful shapes and beautiful images. And what I like about Kylo Ren's helmet is it's this nice balance of function and form. Like there's things about it which just feel utilitarian. The shape of this mask in front of it, this edge that sticks out behind, but then you have this just ornate decorative piece going around it that just feels very elegant in a way, and also foreboding at the same time. So I think this is just it's a masterpiece in design, and it's the crowning jewel on the design of this whole character. And so I wanted to make sure that my design was in a way that brought emphasis to the helmet and made and really showed the helmet at an angle that was its best angle, which gave it the most dynamism. Is that a word? I think it is. Anyway, so once this drawing is done, I will print it out onto a sheet of paper, usually cardstock, and then I'll ink on it. The other thing too is now I have a single image piece of paper that isn't in my sketchbook. So if I wanted to sell this original piece of art, it's much easier, and it doesn't feel like tearing apart a sketchbook just to sell a piece. So, all right, let's go to the drawing, and I'm going to talk about fan art. Okay, fan art. Fan art is the highest form of appreciation, and when you're creating a piece of fan art, what you're saying is, basically what you're telling is the creator of this particular work that you are fan arting, you're telling them how much you appreciate them, how much you love this property, or you love this story, or you love this character. And you're also saying, I want to be a part of this narrative by creating and adding to it. And there's different degrees of fan art. There's just straight up copies where people might copy some existing piece of work that's already been done and do not even their version of it, but do that version of it with their own hand. I would say that's the lowest degree of fan art. You're not bringing anything to the table with that, but it's still a form of appreciation. The next level is you do your version of the character, or of the story, or of the property, and by it being your version, you're adding to it, you're giving your spin on it, and I think what you are doing is you're broadening the scope of what this original IP is, has already stated. You're enlarging its world by doing your version of it. And then third, I think the highest form is you do your whole new interpretation of it, where you might take different elements that aren't or maybe relatable to the original IP, but you're taking different elements and you're combining them and you're creating almost something new, but it's still still harkens back to the original IP. Okay, so those are the different degrees. A lot of times what I find myself in is doing just that middle, my version of the character. But sometimes I'll like to take it further and say, here's this character that I love, but let's put him in a different genre. Let's put him, let's mix this character up a little bit. Let's make him an animal or something. And I'm going to get more into that later. But I just want to start out saying fan art is the highest form of appreciation. When you do fan art, what you're basically doing is you're deconstructing, or maybe even reverse engineering a design that someone else has created. And it's a way for you to sit in their head and to become them for a moment. They've made the decisions, they've gone through and made all the design decisions, and they've done the paperwork and everything. They've worked this out, and what we see is just the finished product. And sometimes you can just take that for granted. But when you go in to start drawing that thing and doing your version of it, or even copying it, you start to understand a little bit of why they made those certain design decisions. You start to understand why they chose those particular colors. You start to, basically, you're asking yourself questions as you're drawing. Why did they pick that particular design motif? Why is this character in these proportions? Why these colors? And when you ask yourself those questions, that's, in a way, you become that designer, the original designer of the character or of the property. Basically, you get to ride in their car, and you get a feel of how the car drives. When you get in and you have to drive your friend's car for whatever reason, and it's a little weird, and you're like, oh, I'm not used to the steering, I'm not used to the clutch. That's something you never would know just by looking at the car. And it's the same with the design. By drawing that design, you start to pick up on little things that you never would have noticed just by looking at it. Okay, so what you learn, and this is, I would say, one of the reason number one of why you need to do fan art, or why you should do fan art, is you learn from the drawing. You learn from doing it. And here are the things you learn. You learn 4 different things. Every design is broken down into these 4 different levels. Okay, there's the concept, there's the composition, there's the design, and then finally there's the rendering. And what you're doing by drawing fan art is you're ingesting all these design elements, or these creation elements. You're digesting the design via these 4 channels. It's basically what it is. So again, concept, composition, design, and rendering. Let's break that down further. Let's talk about concept. Concept is the very base of what this character is. Concept answers these specific questions. What is the genre that this character is? What is the time period? What is the location? What is the gender? What is the profession of this character? It's basically, what are the key components that is this thing? It has nothing to do with visuals. It's what is it? So if you were to describe to me Han Solo without telling me anything about what he looks like, or about what he does in the film, but just to describe to me who Han Solo is, you would say, okay, so he's a man who's a scoundrel, who's a smuggler. He lives in another universe. He flies a spaceship. And these are all things that we're learning about Han Solo without ever describing how he looks, or what what actual actions that he does. And so that's the concept level. Okay, let's talk about, from the new Star Wars film, let's talk about Rey. Rey is a scavenger. She's a female. She's alone. She's young. She's inventive. She's smart. She's a fighter. She's a mechanic. And these are all base concepts of what she is. Let's do another one. Let's do another character. Let's do Hellboy. And I'll use Rey and Hellboy through the rest of these 4 different channels. Okay, Hellboy. How would we describe him without doing any visuals? He's brutish. He's strong. He's Satan's offspring. I would describe him as blue collar. He has a don't care attitude, and I'd also say he's diehard. In that, I don't know if you can kill him. Well, he did die, but he sure took a licking before his death. So that's concept level. Now let's move down to we'll say concept is a base, we'll move up a layer to composition, okay? And this is what the character is actually physically composed of, okay? So we're moving from the abstract to something a little more tangible. What is this character physically composed of? So let's go back to Rey, okay, from Force Awakens. She has desert gear, she has boots, gloves, she has light flowing clothes, she's very utilitarian. She carries a staff, a pistol, dark hair, fair skin. You might even say she's what would you call her? Athletic build, and that would be the components that make up this character. Okay, let's go to Hellboy. He's got cut off horns on his head, black hair, red skin. He's scarred. He's covered in scars. He's got a tail. He's got a right hand of doom. It's a big right hand that connects him to the other worlds. What else? Cloven hooves. He wears a trench coat. He carries a utility belt, or wears a utility belt. He has a massive pistol. Usually wears a t-shirt and shorts. And these are all the components that make up, these are like the Lego bricks that make up your character. Okay, so let's do the next level, the level above that. So we've done concept, we've done composition. Now let's talk about design. And the design answers the question of how are these components visualized? Okay, so these are all building on each other. The first thing, concept, it's abstract. This is just what this character is. The composition is what are these physical objects or physical defined things that help us to tell us what this character is. And then design is how do these components actually look? Okay, it's the color, it's the style, it's the particular shade of red of Hellboy. It's the style that the trench coat is made of. It's the look of the character. Okay, and so if you break down Rey, her style is she's got these utilitarian like desert clothing, but they're very flowing and there is some elegance to them and some gracefulness to them. It's definitely not as farm boyish as Luke's desert clothing. Hers are a lot more feminine. What does her face look like? Does she have pretty eyes, or are they serious eyes? That's the design stuff that we're getting at on this level. With Hellboy, Mike Mignola really gave him this chiseled look to him. The right hand, in proportion to the rest of him, is very large. The scarring on him are a lot of pock marks. It's not like slash marks. It's like divots taken out of him. That's what you're wanting to figure out on the design level. And then lastly, the very top level is rendering, and that's how is this character portrayed. And so you have different options. For Rey, she's portrayed physically in film. Hellboy is portrayed in pen and ink on a comic page. Something like Sully and Mike Wazowski on Monsters, Inc. That's 3D. I'll just pause for a moment here. One of the cool things about Copic markers is you can refill them. If they run out of ink, you could just buy these refills that cost the same amount as a marker, but you can refill the marker fully 6 or 7 times. And so when I run out, I'll just pull that out and drop a few drops in it, and that's one of the big reasons I love the Copic markers. Anyways, rendering. So you have Mike Wazowski and Sully Sullivan, whatever his name is. They're rendered in as 3D models. Okay, and then you might have characters like what Leica does, and they'll do actual the stop motion physical models with wireframes in the middle. And so it's illustration, it's watercolor, it's whatever you decide to render this, and this becomes a part of who this character is. Okay? So when you're doing fan art, what you need to do is make it yours. And what it's not just what you need to do, it's what you do anytime you do fan art, is you add a little bit of yourself to it. And that's really the beauty of fan art, is seeing what you, the artist, brings to this character, what you add to it. Okay? So as you're doing fan art, I want you to think of these these four different channels in which we are sitting in that designer's head. Think about the concept, and play with these different things. This is how you make it your version. This is how you maybe even do an entire new interpretation. On the concept level, play with what the character is. If they're young, make them old. If they're female, make them male. What do they look like as a male? If it's a sci-fi character, what do they look like in the fantasy world? On the composition level, you might leave everything together on concept level, but on the composition level, play with what the components are that make up the character. Change their weapons. Let's say Luke Skywalker didn't carry a lightsaber, but instead carried an actual sword, broadsword. Change the kind of gear that they have. Change their body frame. Instead of a character being slender, make them bulky. On the design level, play with the visuals, exaggerate things, mess with proportions, de-emphasize things. Change the style. Make an anime version of them. Make a 80s cartoon version of them. Play with that part of it. And then on the rendering level, play with the style that you draw them in. What tools and techniques you use. So obviously, if you're drawing a character from film, when you illustrate them, you're already changing that up, and it's really cool to see them that way. If something's a dark like a noir feeling, like Hellboy, what would that character look like modeled in 3D or maybe done in ink wash or a watercolor? Okay, so that's number one. The main benefit of doing fan art is, after you've done that and you've really broken that character down by drawing them, the next time you go to sit down and draw one of your own characters, you're going to have that knowledge in your head of how that character was designed, and you can apply the thinking that designer did to what you're doing. You're going to think of it on those different levels. Okay, that's the main benefit. Now there's side benefits doing fan art, and number one is if you're posting your pictures online, you're going to get more followers by doing fan art. What happens is people have already made an emotional connection to these characters, and so when they see you do your version of that character, it's it invites them to your party, okay, via their fan obsession. So let's say someone loves Harry Potter, they're a big fan of Harry Potter. Let's say you do 10 of the characters from Harry Potter in your style, and you do your version of it. This person who loves Harry Potter is definitely going to find that, and they're going to see that, and they're going to love what you did, and then they're going to say, oh, what else does this person do? They're going to come for Harry Potter, but they're going to stay for the other stuff that you do. Number two, and this, I could vouch for that, for getting more followers. Anytime I do any sort of fan art of any character, somebody will say, hey, check this guy out, he did Optimus Prime, you love Optimus Prime, and they're now a part of, I'll get a follow from them. Number two, on these side benefits, it can lead to work, okay? What happens is, if you do enough of this, or you have a really cool take on these characters, you'll pique the interest of the people who own or manage that particular IP. For example, I did a couple of really cool versions of Rocket Raccoon, and that's what, among some other things, but that's what really sealed the deal for Marvel asking me to draw Rocket Raccoon. They saw this fan art that I did of him, and they knew, okay, this is a guy that could do the job. And I've heard other stories of other people doing fan art on a professional level and really quality stuff, and then end up getting work doing, whether it's in comics or concept art or something, doing fan art for that particular IP. Okay, and lastly, you could sell your fan art. Someone is more likely to buy a fan drawing of Kylo Ren or of Hellboy or of Spider-Man than they are of your original stuff, just because there's already that emotional attachment there, and they may already be a collector of that particular character, so they want to add to that collection. And so a lot of times my fan art will sell easier and faster and at a higher price than any of my original art. So you can sell it. I have a friend, Will Terry, and I asked him to share his thoughts on fan art. He never ever did fan art ever, and I kept telling him, you should do fan art, Will Terry, you should do fan art, Will Terry. Finally he gave in, and here's what he has to say about that.
When I first started seeing people doing and participating in creating fan art, well, first off, I didn't even know it was called fan art. But I thought, why are so many people so caught up in drawing something that someone else has invented? It's already been invented. Move on and draw your own art. But then an interesting thing happened. Over time, my business partner at svslearn.com, Jake Parker, kept encouraging me to make fan art to connect with my audience, and I didn't understand what he meant. He kept doing this over time, and finally I just said, I explained to him, I don't get it. I don't understand why me creating fan art will connect me. I didn't want to see it, but he explained it in a way that just really made sense. And that is that people already have an emotional connection to those characters, the characters that they've fallen in love with over the years. So it's only natural that if you do your own version of those characters, it will be an introduction into your world, into your art. For a long time, for the next year, I had no idea where I fit in, until an idea sparked that I do, because I do children's books, I do cute artwork. Maybe I reimagine these characters from their beginnings, from their origins, and reimagine and draw these characters as kids. And a funny thing happened. It really connected me to a new group of people, and people that meet me at conventions and other gatherings where they probably would never have been introduced into my world, and where where they buy my personal prints of my personal work. And but the biggest thing that I've gotten out of it is it's been an extremely fun project to work on, and I'm still looking forward to continuing into 2016.
All right, thanks, Will Terry, for your insight on fan art. Appreciate you recording that for me. And so that is why you should do fan art. I do want to take a minute here and talk about the dangers of doing fan art, or doing too much fan art. The big danger in doing too much fan art is all of the fan art drawings that you do means it's a drawing of your own work, of your own ideas, of your own intellectual property that you haven't done. So 100 fan art drawings is great, but it also means that's 100 drawings of whatever project you've always wanted to do, whatever idea you've been cooking up and building in your head. That's 100 drawings of that project that hasn't been done. And so what you need to find is this balance, I think a healthy balance of working on your own stuff versus working on fan art. And for me, what I find is I tend to turn to fan art when I'm getting a little stagnant in my own work and in my own ideas. I'll turn to fan art to get ideas and to get invigorated and to get inspiration. And what'll happen is I'll live in another world that someone else has created for a couple days or a week, and I start to get infused with those ideas, and I see, how I could apply this and I could apply that little piece and this little nugget to what I'm creating and what I want to build. And so that's how I use fan art, and I think that's the healthy balance there. I know some artists and some creators who all they do is fan art, and I wonder, in 10 years, you look back and you see all this fan art that you've done, but you don't see that one project that you wish you had gotten finished, that one graphic novel, that one idea. And so find out what your balance is and what works for you. I say do fan art, but not at the cost of your own ideas and creating your own IP. I think that's the hard look that you have to take at you and fan art. I think the second thing is building a career on fan art. It's kind of a sandy foundation. You've heard the old parable, the wise man built his house on the rock, the foolish man built his house on the sand. And I think building a house or building a career on just the creation of fan art, I think it doesn't pay off in the long run. I think what you want to do as an artist or as a creator is you want to be working on things now that will pay you in the future, that will pay you 5 years from now, that will pay you 10 years from now, that if they don't pay you, they're doing something to help build your future, and that will still be viable in the future. Say you're doing fan art for a particular character that's super hot right now. Everybody loves that character. They're buying your original pieces. You're getting lots of likes and followers from that. If you keep doing that, you don't know in 5 years or 10 years if people are going to like that character anymore, if they'll have moved on and not think that character's as cool. And in 10 years, you look back and you have all of this artwork that you've created of that character or of that superhero team or of that intellectual property. And what you want to do is look back in 10 years and see, here's this thing that I created and I've been building on, and it's my own thing, and now it's turned into this. It's become a graphic novel, it's become a comic book, it's become it has its following, it has its own fans. And I think that's what you want to do, is you want to build a career that will get fans for you and not necessarily fans for this thing that already exists. And that right there there's a third danger, I guess, and it's the danger of lying to yourself. When you create, let's say you do a drawing of Captain America, you post it online, you get 500 likes, everybody loves it. Oh, this Captain America is so cool. I think what sometimes some artists, and I've gotten caught up in this before, is people think, oh, they love my art. The reality is they love Captain America, and it's cool to see Captain America drawn in the way that you drew him. And so you can get caught up in that and thinking, oh, I've got all these fans that are fans of me, the fans of the way I draw, and the fans of my work, when really these people are just fans of the obsession that they already have for Captain America or Harry Potter or Star Wars. And that's what you have to remember, is they're hitting that like button 90% because you drew Darth Vader, and 10% because it was drawn in your style or because it came from you. And so that's the thing you have to be aware of. When you're doing your own character, your own ideas, and you're getting likes for that, you know people like it because it's cool and they're building that emotional attachment to your work. And that's what you want to do in the long run. Like I said earlier, use fan art to bring people to your party, to your table. They came for the Captain America drawing, but they stayed for the work that you're creating that's coming from your mind and from your heart. And so I guess to sum it up, you should do fan art, but do it responsibly. Alright, first video of the new year. I just want to say thank you to everybody last year who subscribed, who came on board to my YouTube channel. I just felt like I needed to make these videos, and I ended up doing about 32 of them that went through everything from my process of how I create work, my thoughts on what I'm thinking about as I'm creating, what motivates me, what drives me to do what I do, and the response has been tremendous. I really appreciate all the comments and all the feedback and just all the stories you guys have been sharing. I really appreciate that. This next year, is going to be a crazy year with just what I have on my plate, but I am committed to continue making these videos. I'm going to shoot for doing one a week. I know that's like almost impossible, but I'm going to fit this in between things and work on a little bit here, work on a little bit there. It killed me to just get this video out this first week. I was sick for a couple of days, unexpected stuff, my wife went out of town, all that stuff. So hopefully as the weeks progress, I get back into a groove and I can make these things. If I miss a week, I apologize in advance. Just know life got crazy. And I guess that's it. Share this video with your friends. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment. Tell me your thoughts about what I talked about today. And we will see you next time. Bye.